Major, the New York Times has this story revealing that the president apparently told the Russians in an Oval Office meeting that the firing of James Comey would relieve pressure he felt from the Russia investigation. On its surface, it certainly seems like a tough story, a bad story for the White House. But one official in that story was quoted as saying that it was a negotiating tactic. Trump was trying to make the Russians feel some sympathy for the box they may have put him in and perhaps get some concessions. So I suppose two questions. One, how much do these domestic challenges Trump has faced in the last couple of weeks affect the substance of these trips? And is there the possibility that the White House could somehow leverage it into a positive?
First question, it's a very difficult problem for this president and his team to deal with as it tries to make its way across a very busy and ambitious agenda. First here in Saudi Arabia, then to Israel, then to Italy, then to the G7 meeting, then to NATO meetings. Lots of things this president would like to set in motion and project, as he often says, an America first foreign policy that means America is back, and if not dominant on the world stage, certainly more influential and more self-confident than it was under President Obama. That's what the White House wants to project. Very difficult for a White House to project that when the foreign leaders, wherever the president is, here in Saudi Arabia, Israel, Europe, know that he is facing significant domestic problems back home, and domestic problems that are not just related to his popularity in the polls. Every American president deals with that, and all foreign leaders know that. But these appear to foreign leaders that the president will be meeting with much more structurally significant. There are those in Congress openly talking about impeachment, and though that process hasn't even begun and may never begin, the mere talk of it raises questions about how long and how powerful this American president will be in that office. And any element of uncertainty around those two questions, the ability to carry out a new agenda and the longevity in office, make foreign leaders reluctant to follow America's lead, number one, and also maybe, if they have agenda items with the American president, find him more vulnerable than he otherwise might be. So it is a significant complicating factor. The second question, can the White House work these conversations somehow into a net positive? Well, I would say this. For the better part of a week, the White House has had no means by which to try to explain these conversations President Trump had with the Russian diplomats, the Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov or Russia's ambassador to the United States, Sergei Kislyak. And at the end of the week, finally they have mounted what they hope will be a credible, if not explanation, at least context to say, well, the president was saying to the Russians, look, see what kind of this political hot water I'm in? You might have caused that. Don't you feel bad about that? Shouldn't you give me and America some concessions on behalf of that? Well, that is a very stretched presentation, not only of what may or may not have happened between the Trump campaign and the Russians, but Russian culpability. And look, if the Russians succeeded and got what they wanted out of the election, they're not going to feel bad or sorry for this American president or its administration at all. The Russians are going to get what they want. Always have, always will. Talk to any expert on Russian foreign policy. They will tell you that. Always and perpetually looking out for the best interest of Moscow, no matter who the negotiating partner is. So, one thing that's important to note, as you identified, it's a new talking point for the White House, one that has been self-starved of one for the better part of a week. But is it a talking point that can withstand extensive scrutiny? I'll let others be the judge. But just based on the facts presented to the country, it appears doubtful.
And finally, Major, it seems like President Trump can't quit Mike Flynn. After drifting out of the news cycle for a little while, the former national security advisor made it back in the headlines this week with reports that the president thought firing him was, quote, a mistake, and that he may have spoken to Flynn as recently as last month. Now, why would the president keep up a relationship with someone who has caused so many problems for him?
That's a very good question, and I can't give you a definitive answer to that. And I am sure there are a great number of White House advisors that would much prefer the president not talk to Michael Flynn anymore and not continue the relationship that they had that developed during the campaign when Michael Flynn, retired general, former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, was one of the most visible and aggressive surrogates for President, then candidate Trump, now President Trump. So there is a loyalty factor there, and President Trump takes loyalty very seriously. He considers it among the most important characteristics of anyone in his orbit, and he likes to return it if he believes it's been given to him. But the reason Michael Flynn cannot be separated from this White House is because his activities continue to raise questions in a legal context and in a political one. And anyone who thinks Michael Flynn and his part of this saga is going away is deluding themselves. He was a central part of the Trump campaign as a surrogate. He was a central fixture in the Trump transition. He was named National Security Advisor, and then he was fired. And everything he did in that long arc of involvement with candidate Trump and President Trump is now legally relevant and politically relevant, and will be until whatever charges, if charges are brought against Michael Flynn, are fully adjudicated.
White House correspondent Major Garrett, who of course we should mention moonlights as co-host of The Takeout, which you can hear right here on CBSN, traveling with the president in Riyadh. Major, thank you.
You got it.